The starship Celesta Prime glided silently through the endless black of space. Its smooth silver hull reflected the distant light of 1,000 stars. Inside, corridors hummed with energy, and the soft vibration of the engines made the air feel alive. The ship was enormous, a floating academy where young cadets from across the galaxy, trained to serve in the interstellar military, cadets of all shapes and sizes filled the hallways. Some had skin that shimmered like sunlight on water, while others had tentacles that curled and twined as they walked. Their eyes in colors of every shade imaginable reflected both curiosity and ambition. Among them were the young recruits assigned to the Earth History program, as part of the curriculum that focused on human conflicts, wars, and strategies. Lyra, a cadet with soft lavender skin and bright green eyes, walked alongside her friends Kether and Orcs. They had just finished a morning session on starship navigation, and now their instructor had summoned them for something entirely different. Earth. Orcs whispered, his voice trembling slightly. "I have heard humans are chaotic," Lyra said, "but also brave, very brave. That's what I want to see." She paused, her eyes sparkling. "I wonder if they are really like the stories say." Kether laughed softly. "Stories always make humans seem heroic, but I heard this program will show the real footage, real war, not stories." Their conversation stopped as they entered a large viewing chamber. The walls were dark, polished metal. Seats rose in tiers like a natural amphitheater. In the center, a massive holographic screen flickered to life. Commander Zarn, a tall, broad-shouldered alien with silver eyes, stepped forward. His uniform gleamed with medals, each one representing decades of interstellar service. "Cadets," he said, his voice deep and calm. "Today you will observe the history of a species that some of you may underestimate, humans. You will see both their triumphs and their failures. You will witness courage, ingenuity, and the terrible cost of war." The cadets murmured among themselves. Some were eager, some anxious. Lyra felt a flutter of excitement. "I want to learn everything," she whispered to Kether. Zarn raised a clawed hand. "Silence. Focus. What you see will challenge your ideas about military service. Remember this. Observing history is not the same as living it. You are safe. But your minds must be open." The room darkened. The holographic screen filled with images of Earth, a blue and green planet spinning slowly against the black void. The first footage was simple. Soldiers in uniform, parades, drills. At first, cadets leaned forward, curious but relaxed. Then the screen shifted. Battles, explosions shook the ground. Humans ran, fired, and Lyra's green eyes widened. "They fight like us?" she asked quietly. Kether shook his head. "No, different. They improvise, always changing plans. Look at that." A squad of human soldiers darted behind ruined walls, creating traps from whatever debris was nearby. Orcs swallowed hard. "It's messy, but smart." Zarn's voice echoed through the chamber. "Observe carefully. Humans are not the most advanced species in technology. Their weapons are limited compared to ours. But their minds, their adaptability, is remarkable. Note their creativity and survival. Learn their spirit." Cadets watched as humans faced impossible odds. In one clip, a small team defended a village against overwhelming forces. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, but they refused to retreat. They built clever devices from scrap metal, set traps in ruined buildings, and coordinated signals with what little equipment they had. Lyra's hands gripped the armrests. "They don't give up," she whispered. "No matter what," Kether nodded slowly. "And yet, so much destruction. Look at the civilians. So many are suffering." The footage shifted again. Cities in flames, families fleeing, soldiers comforting frightened children. Cadets felt an uneasy tension in the room. Many had never witnessed such raw chaos and determination combined. Commander Zarn's eyes scanned the audience. "This is war. Courage comes with a cost. You must understand both. Admire the heroism, but never ignore the consequences." Some cadets began whispering among themselves. "Why do humans continue fighting?" one asked. "Why not stop before it gets worse?" "They rebuild," Lyra answered. "They find hope even after losing everything. That is different from us. We leave the weak behind."
Heather
frowned. Different doesn't always mean better, but impressive. They survive by thinking fast, feeling deeply, and risking everything. The footage continued for hours. Cadets saw humans adapting in forests, deserts, and icy plains. They witnessed both great victories and terrible failures. Each scene carried lessons of strategy, bravery, and most importantly, the high cost of choice. Lyra's chest tightened at each civilian casualty, yet she felt inspired by every human who helped another despite danger. Orrin leaned back, his antennae drooping. "I didn't expect it to be surreal. I thought war was about tactics and power, not fear and courage and hope." Lyra nodded. "They are not perfect. They make mistakes, but they never stop trying." The session finally ended. The lights brightened slowly, and the cadets sat in silence. Some were wide-eyed, others looked pale. Commander Zarn's voice cut through the quiet. "Now, you understand why humans are both feared and respected. Their victories are extraordinary, but their cost is always high. You may admire them, you may question them, but you cannot ignore them." A young cadet, smaller than most, raised a trembling hand. "Sir, I feel like I don't want to fight anymore." "Not like this." Zarn regarded the cadet carefully. "Good. Feeling is not weakness. Understanding is strength. Today, you learn that courage has meaning beyond power. Remember it." As the cadets left the chamber, many spoke in hushed tones. Lyra walked slowly, deep in thought. "Half of what we saw, I can't stop thinking about the people. The fear. The hope. I want to serve but like them, in a way that protects rather than destroys." Kether fell into step beside her. "I feel it too. But can we find a way to serve without losing ourselves?" Orrin remained quiet, staring at the corridor ahead. "I don't know, but I want to learn how." The cadets went to their quarters that evening, minds buzzing. Outside, the SciFi drifted past Earth, spinning silently. The blue and green planet seemed peaceful from space, yet the echoes of its history had reached their hearts. Many wondered what it truly meant to be brave, to be human, to serve. Lyra lay in her bunk, staring at the ceiling. "I have never felt so conflicted," she whispered, "but also inspired. If humans can endure all that and still hope, maybe we can too. Maybe we can learn how to serve without losing our souls." Somewhere in the ship, the younger cadets of her group whispered similar thoughts. Questions that had no immediate answers but demanded reflection. Questions that would shape their futures in ways they could not yet imagine. As the SciFi sailed silently through the void, the first seeds of doubt and admiration had been planted. A journey that would test not only skill and strategy, but also heart and conscience had begun. The day had ended. But its lessons were only starting to take root, and in the minds of these young cadets, Earth had already left its mark. The day after the first viewing, the cadets returned to the Earth history program with heavy hearts. The images of human conflicts lingered in their minds. The excitement they had felt the day before was replaced with unease, curiosity, and even fear. Lyra, Kether, and Orrin walked quietly through the halls of SciFi, their steps echoing in the polished metal corridors. "I can't stop thinking about it," Lyra said softly. "Those cities, destroyed. The people, running, crying, and yet some kept fighting, helping each other. How do they do it?" Kether nodded. "I know. I've seen bravery before, but this is different. They improvise, adapt. They risk everything, not for medals, but for each other." Orrin's voice was quieter than usual. "And they fail too. So much suffering. I don't know if I can admire them or fear them more." The trio arrived at the program's next session, where Commander Zarn waited, his silver eyes reflecting the room's soft light. The holographic screen flickered on again, this time showing more recent footage that was closer to the cadets' lifetimes. Today, Zarn said, "You will see not only tactics and strategy, but also the human cost of war. Remember what you learned yesterday. Courage exists alongside chaos." The first clip was a battle in a city during a recent war. Buildings were reduced to rubble, and fires burned unchecked. Humans ran through smoke and dust, carrying supplies to civilians or dragging wounded comrades to safety. The cadets leaned forward in their seats, unable to look away. Lyora's green eyes widened. They are still helping each other. Even in this chaos, how? Kether's jaw tightened. Because they care. They value life, even when everything seems lost. Oren shivered. But look at the families. The children. They have to run, hiding from destruction. Why would anyone put themselves in this danger? Zarn's voice broke the silence. Humans do not always fight for conquest or power. Often, they fight to protect, to survive, and to preserve what they love. That is what makes them both dangerous and admirable. The cadets watched humans climb over wreckage, rescue the trapped, and fight to save their communities. Yet, alongside this bravery, there was suffering. Smoke-filled hospitals, families torn apart, children screaming in fear images that left a deep impression. Lyora's claws gripped the armrests, her knuckles white. "I feel something strange," she whispered to Kether. Admiration, but also sadness. "I never thought watching war could feel like this." Kether nodded slowly. "It's not the fighting that is remarkable. It's the choice to continue helping, to endure, even when losing seems certain. That is something we rarely see in our training." Oren's voice trembled. "I think some of us won't be able to handle this. Half of the cadets might quit if we watch more." Zarn's eyes swept across the room. "Possibly. But understanding the cost of conflict is essential. To lead, you must know the consequences of every choice. You must recognize courage, and you must recognize failure." The screen changed again. This time cadets saw soldiers using whatever they could find, old machinery, debris, even children's toys, to create defenses or aid civilians. They improvised communication networks using scrap electronics, coordinated rescues under fire, and found hope in the smallest victories. Lyra leaned forward, her heart pounding. They are inventing solutions on the fly. Even under fire, even when they are scared, this is genius. Kether's tone was quieter now. Yes, but genius with cost. So much cost. Their ingenuity is a double-edged sword. It saves lives, but it also prolongs danger. They never stop. They endure. They adapt. And they suffer. Some cadets began murmuring, unsure whether to admire or recoil. The footage continued to show humans working together, rescuing strangers and rebuilding even as cities burned. The cadets noticed something unusual. Humans were not motivated solely by orders or protocol. Their actions were guided by empathy, hope, and loyalty. Oren whispered to Lyra, They fight differently than us. We follow plans, commands, rules. Humans, they fight with heart. They decide, and the consequences. They bear them themselves." Lyra nodded, her green eyes glistening. "And sometimes, they fail, but they get up again." "They always get up again?" Zarn's voice cut through the quiet. "This is the lesson. Courage alone is not enough. Wisdom, empathy, and moral choice are equally important. Many humans die because they choose what they believe is right, not what is safe. You must understand this if you are to be leaders in any military organization." The cadets remained silent for several minutes, digesting the images. Then Zarn spoke again. "Some of you may feel conflicted. That is natural. You are learning not only strategy, but also the moral weight of leadership. Conflict is not only about defeating an enemy, it is about making choices when all paths are dangerous. That is what separates warriors from leaders." Lyra felt her chest tighten. She remembered the children running through smoke, the families huddled in basements, and the soldiers who risked their lives to help them. I don't know if I want to fight like this," she whispered to Kether. "Not if it means hurting others." but I admire them so much. I want to be like them." Keither nodded. "I feel the same. They survive not because of power, but because of determination and care. And yet, the suffering, it's almost too much to watch." Orrin was pale, his tentacles curling nervously. I think I understand why some cadets might resign. This isn't like our training simulations. This is real. Real lives, real suffering, real courage." Zarn observed them carefully. And that is the point. Understanding the human approach to war is not meant to encourage despair. It is meant to challenge you, to see bravery and tragedy intertwined, to recognize that leadership is not simple. It is complex, difficult, and often morally challenging. The session ended with a final, haunting image. A human soldier kneeling beside a child, shielding them from falling debris even as the building collapsed around them. The cadets sat in silence, many blinking rapidly, unable to process the mixture of awe and sorrow. Lyra finally spoke, her voice trembling. "They are heroes. Not because they fight well, but because they care. And even when everything seems lost, they keep going." Keither's jaw tightened. "And that is what makes them dangerous. Not their weapons, not their numbers, but their spirit. You cannot break humans with fear. You cannot stop them with orders. You can only understand them, or be destroyed by them." Orrin shivered. "I feel like my whole view of military service is changing. Watching this, it's not just history, it's a lesson, and it's terrifying." As the cadets left the viewing chamber, half of them whispered questions they had never considered. Could they continue in military service? Could they follow orders without losing their sense of right and wrong? Could they honor life while serving a system built on conflict? Lyra walked slowly with Keither and Orrin. The corridors felt quieter than usual, as if the ship itself understood the weight of what they had seen. "I think I might leave," Orrin admitted softly. "I can't ignore this. I can't follow orders blindly after seeing what humans endure. I don't want to cause that kind of suffering." Lyra's green eyes met his. "I feel the same, but I also want to serve. Not blindly, but wisely. Like humans, protecting, helping, inspiring, not destroying." Keither looked out the window at Earth, glowing blue and green in the distance. "It is strange," he said. "They are fragile, yet unbreakable. They make mistakes, they fail, they suffer, and still, they rise again. If we can learn from that, maybe we can serve in a better way. Or maybe we will decide we cannot serve at all." The cadets returned to their quarters that night, minds buzzing with images of courage and destruction. Sleep was difficult. The faces of human soldiers and civilians haunted them. Some cried quietly, some wrote in logs, and some simply stared at the ceiling, questioning the meaning of service, duty, and morality. Outside, the SciFi drifted silently past Earth, unaware of the storm it had sparked in the hearts of its young cadets. A lesson had begun, one of courage, conscience, and choice. And for many, the path forward would be uncertain. The day had ended, but the questions it raised were only beginning. The cadets were changed. Some were inspired, some conflicted, and some already imagining life beyond military service. Humanity from a distance had already left its mark. The halls of the SciFi were quieter than usual that morning. The cadets who had attended the Earth history program moved slowly, their usual energy replaced by a thoughtful stillness. Lyra, Keither, and Orrin walked side by side, each lost in their own thoughts. The events of the previous 2 days had left a lasting mark. Images of human courage, ingenuity, and suffering replayed in their minds. Lyra kept thinking about the soldiers shielding civilians, about families fleeing from destruction, about the resilience that seemed to define humanity. Her chest felt heavy, but her heart was strangely inspired. The trio reached the reflection hall, large circular chamber with smooth metallic walls and soft lighting. Holographic consoles glowed in the center, each one ready for cadets to write reports or record personal observations. Commander Zarn stood at the far end, watching the group approach with his usual calm, piercing gaze. "Cadets," he began, Today you will reflect. You have observed history. You have witnessed courage and suffering. Now you must consider what it teaches you about service, duty, and morality. Write your reflections. Speak honestly. This is not a test of skill, but a test of understanding. Lyra approached a console and activated it. Words appeared in her mind as she typed, trying to capture her swirling thoughts. Humans are strange and powerful. They are fragile, yet they survive. They suffer, yet they hope. They fight, yet they protect. I admire them, but I fear the cost. How can one serve without losing sight of life itself? I want to follow their example not blindly, but with conscience. Perhaps that is the true meaning of courage. Kether began his own reflection. His fingers hovered over the keys as he searched for the right words. I have always believed strength is the greatest virtue. Now I see that wisdom and empathy matter more. Humans do not only rely on power, they rely on their minds, their hearts, and their choices. To serve as a leader is to weigh life against strategy, morality against orders. I am not sure I am ready for such responsibility. Orin stared at the console but could not type immediately. His thoughts were too loud, too tangled. Finally, he wrote slowly, carefully, I feel doubt for the first time. Watching humans fight has shown me the weight of service. It is not about winning battles or earning honors. It is about facing consequences and choosing the right path. I am not sure I can continue in a military that asks me to ignore these lessons. Around them, their cadets typed their reflections. Some were brief and mechanical, echoing the language of duty. Others were longer, emotional, questioning the very essence of military service. Whispers traveled through the hall, some filled with admiration for humans, some with fear, and some with doubt about their own futures. Commander Zarn walked among them, observing quietly. He stopped beside Lyra and Kether. Many of you struggle, he said softly. It is natural. Understanding courage and sacrifice is easier from afar than in practice. Humans endure because they choose to. They do not obey blindly. Leadership requires the same clarity, the same moral courage. Lyra looked up. Sir, how can we serve if we want to protect life, not destroy it? How can we be soldiers and still honor what we have learned? Zarn's silver eyes glimmered. You will find that the best leaders are not only strategists, but also guardians of conscience. Duty and morality are not always aligned. You must choose carefully. Some will leave because they cannot reconcile these truths. Others will stay and strive to change the way service is understood. The cadets continued to work, writing long reflections. The hall buzzed with quiet tension. Some were clearly inspired, some conflicted, and some near decision. By mid-morning, the cadets gathered in small groups, discussing their reflections. Lyra, Kether, and Orin sat together. Their conversation hushed but intense. I can't stop thinking about the children, Lyra said. The way the soldiers risked themselves to save them. That is the kind of service I want to give. But can I stay in a military that might ask me to do the opposite? Kether's voice was calm but firm. I feel torn. Humans teach us that courage is more than skill, it is moral choice. But following orders blindly. I cannot do that anymore. I want to lead, yes, but I also want to preserve life, not destroy it. Orin's tentacles curled nervously. I think some of us will resign. I might. I can't serve without considering what I have learned. I can't just obey if it means hurting others. I don't know what the right choice is. Other cadets joined their conversation. Some shared similar doubts. Others defended the idea of service without question, arguing that obedience and efficiency were necessary to maintain order in the galaxy. The debates grew heated, yet never violent. As everyone grappled with their new understanding, Commander Zarn stepped in, addressing the hall. This discussion is important. It is a sign of maturity. You are beginning to understand that leadership is not only about skill, but about ethics. Some of you will stay. Some will leave. There is no shame in either. The question is whether you are honest with yourselves about your choices. The cadets fell silent again, each lost in thought. Lyra imagined herself on the battlefield. She saw the humans she had watched, small, fragile, yet unbreakable. They inspired her. She imagined following their example, leading with courage, empathy, and intelligence. Yet the path seemed difficult, almost impossible. Kether considered the same vision, but with a heavier heart. "If I stay, I must change the system from within," he whispered to Lyra. "I cannot serve as blindly as before. I must honor life while serving. Otherwise, I betray what I have learned." Orrin, quiet and tense, finally spoke. "Maybe leaving is also service, protecting life in other ways, teaching, rebuilding, exploring. Not every hero wears armor or carries a weapon. Some fight by helping others, not by fighting enemies." Their conversation stretched for hours. Reflection had become conflictant with each other, but with themselves. The cadets realized that understanding humans meant questioning everything they had been taught. At the end of the day, Zarn gathered the cadets again. "Many of you will face choices soon. Some may resign, some may stay. Both decisions require courage. Remember what you have learned. Strategy without conscience is empty, and courage without morality is dangerous. The best leaders combine both." Silence followed, deep and thoughtful. The cadets left the reflection hall slowly, some walking in pairs, others alone. Lyra, Kether, and Orrin returned to their quarters, each carrying the weight of what they had learned. Lyra sat on her bunk, staring at her hands. "I feel changed. I cannot ignore what I have seen. Humans are alive in ways we rarely understand. I want to serve, but I want to honor that spirit. I do not yet know how." Kether leaned against the wall. "We are at a crossroads. Many cadets will leave. Some of us will stay, but we must remember these lessons. We cannot let training blind us to morality. Leadership is choice, not only command." Orrin, curled up in his bunk, staring at the ceiling. "I feel doubt, yes, but I also feel hope. Humans. They survive because they believe in something greater than themselves. Maybe that is what we need to carry forward. Hope and courage together, not just power." The night passed slowly. Outside, the SciFi drifted silently past the blue and green Earth, orbiting peacefully. But inside the ship, young hearts and minds were restless. The cadets were beginning to realize that serving in the military was not only about skill or obedience, it was about choice, conscience, and courage. By morning, the tension was palpable. Half the cadets had already whispered their doubts to friends. Some were preparing to submit formal resignation requests. Others had resolved to stay, but with a new determination to balance duty with morality. The ship was alive with quiet debates, deep reflection, and unspoken fear of the unknown. Lyra, Kether, and Orrin walked to the observation deck. Gazing down at Earth, its oceans shimmered. Its forests stretched endlessly, and cities glowed faintly in the distance. Lyra whispered, "They survived everything, and they hope. How can we not carry that lesson with us?" Kether nodded. "If we serve with their spirit in mind. If we leave, we honor it by protecting life in other ways. Either path requires courage, either path teaches leadership." Orrin finally spoke, his voice steady. "And either path is valid. Courage is not only on the battlefield, it is in choice. And we have choices now." As the cadets stared at Earth, the weight of responsibility settled upon them. They had seen humans endure unimaginable trials and still rise again. They had reflected on the cost of war and the power of hope. And now they faced their own test, not of skill, but of conscience. The day ended with quiet determination. For some, resignation would come. For others, a renewed sense of purpose would guide them. Either way, the lessons of Earth had left an indelible mark on their hearts and minds, shaping the cadets in ways they could not yet fully understand. The SciFi hummed with a tense energy that morning. Cadets moved silently through the corridors, still weighed down by the lessons of human courage and suffering. Half of them were now quietly questioning their futures, debating whether military service was the right path. Lyra, Kether, and Orrin walked together, their steps measured, their thoughts heavy. "Do you think we are ready for today?" Orrin asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The simulations. They are not like Earth's wars, but I feel they will test more than just skill. Lyra nodded, her green eyes focused. I think they want to see if we have learned from humans, not just tactics, but morality. Our choices matter as much as our decisions and strategy. Ketha remained quiet, staring out at the stars through the ship's observation window. I hope we are ready. But I fear some cadets may fail not because of lack of skill, but because they cannot face the consequences of their own choices. The cadets gathered in the simulation chamber, a large dome filled with holographic projectors and soft glowing lights. Commander Zarn stood at the front, his expression solemn but calm. Cadets, he began. Today you will face a simulation unlike any before. You will control a planetary defense scenario. Every decision you make will affect civilians, soldiers, and resources. Success is measured not only by victory, but by the preservation of life. Your challenge is to balance strategy with conscience. Are you ready? A quiet murmur swept through the chamber. Some cadets nodded eagerly, ready to prove themselves. Others, including Lyra, Kether, and Orrin, felt a pang of unease. The simulation began. The holographic planet appeared in the center of the room, a detailed world with cities, forests, rivers, and mountains. Enemy forces advanced, their numbers overwhelming in certain regions. Civilian populations fled from danger, and resources were scattered across the planet. Lyra's hands hovered over the control panel. She studied the map carefully, remembering the humans she had seen how they protected each other despite the odds. She made her first decision. She would deploy rescue units to civilian zones, before sending troops to strategic locations. Kether observed her choices, nodding slightly. He decided to focus on defense, building shields around critical population centers while setting traps for advancing enemies. His approach was cautious but protective. Emphasizing the preservation of life over rapid victory, Orrin hesitated, unsure how to act. He finally chose a middle path, sending units to both defend civilians and engage enemy forces in limited conflict. His decisions were careful, but every move weighed on him. Echoing the lessons he had learned from Earth's history, as the simulation progressed, the enemy advanced aggressively. Some cadets followed traditional tactics, attacking directly and prioritizing strategic victory over life. The consequences were immediate. Holographic cities burned, civilian populations suffered, and casualties mounted. The room filled with the quiet gasps of cadets watching the results. Lyra's group, by contrast, focused on minimizing harm. Civilians were rescued, bridges were repaired, and evacuation corridors were established. Her unit slowed the enemy's advance without causing unnecessary destruction. A cadet nearby muttered angrily, "You're not winning fast enough. You'll fail the simulation." Lyra shook her head. Winning isn't everything. Protecting life is more important. Strategy without morality is not leadership. Kether added, "We are learning from humans. Courage alone is not enough. We must also value life." Orrin nodded, still tense. Every choice has a cost. But the cost of inaction, of ignoring suffering, that is worse. The simulation introduced more challenges. Enemy forces captured critical points, and civilian populations were trapped in dangerous zones. Some cadets panicked, sending units into reckless attacks, ignoring the humanitarian cost. The holographic casualties grew, and murmurs of distress filled the chamber. Lyra and her group continued their careful strategy. They rerouted evacuation paths, set up temporary defenses, and coordinated strikes that neutralized threats without harming civilians. Each choice was deliberate, calculated, and guided by empathy as much as logic. Commander Zarn observed silently from the side. He noted which cadets prioritized strategy over life, and which considered both equally. Some cadets were clearly uncomfortable, hesitating with each decision. Others acted decisively but without compassion. As the final stage of the simulation approached, the enemy launched a massive assault on a densely populated region. Many cadets' units were overwhelmed, leading to catastrophic losses. Lyra's units, however, had prepared in advance. Evacuation routes were open, Defenses were positioned strategically, and citizens were guided to safety. The enemy was delayed, not destroyed. But the civilian population was protected. Kether smiled faintly, despite the tension. "We did it," he whispered. "Not perfectly, but we saved them." Oryn exhaled, feeling a mixture of relief and pride. This feels more like what humans would do. Not victory at all costs, but careful, thoughtful courage. After the simulation ended, cadets gathered to review the results. The holographic display showed stark differences. Many cadets had failed to protect civilians, winning the battle but losing the moral lesson. Others, including Lyra, Kether, and Oryn, had preserved life, achieving a balanced outcome that reflected both strategy and compassion. Commander Zarn addressed the group. "Some of you have performed well in strategy, but ignored the human cost. Others have balanced success with empathy. Leadership is not measured by victory alone. It is measured by the choices you make and how you bear responsibility for those choices." The room was quiet. Some cadets lowered their heads, embarrassed by their reckless actions. Others, like Lyra and her friends, felt a quiet pride. Knowing they had honored the lessons of humanity, Zarn continued, "Many of you now face a choice beyond the simulation. Will you continue in service, using these lessons to guide your actions? Or will you leave, seeking ways to protect life and honor courage outside the military?" Either path requires reflection and moral strength. Half the cadets, already conflicted, began quietly submitting formal resignation requests. They realized that military service, even guided by ethics, might not align with their personal values. Others stayed, determined to apply what they had learned to change the system from within. Lyra, Kether, and Oryn walked slowly to the observation deck, staring at Earth once again. The blue and green planet seemed peaceful from orbit, but the lessons of its history remained vivid in their minds. "I think I understand now," Lyra said softly. "Serving is not just about following orders or winning battles. It's about making choices that matter, even when it is hard, even when it is risky." Kether nodded. "We have seen what happens when courage is not guided by morality. We have seen what humans endure and how they survive. If we stay, we must lead differently, honor life while serving, and inspire others to do the same." Oryn whispered, "And if we leave, we do so with the knowledge that courage is not limited to the battlefield. We can help, protect, and teach in other ways." Either choice is service in its own form. The cadets stood silently, each contemplating the path ahead. Some had chosen to resign. Others had renewed their commitment to serve ethically. All had been changed by the simulation, by the lessons of Earth, and by the understanding that true leadership required courage, conscience, and choice. As night fell on the SpaceOdyssey, the young cadets returned to their quarters. Conversations were hushed but thoughtful. Some debated the meaning of duty, some planned their resignations, and others resolved to serve differently. The ship, orbiting silently, carried a group of young minds, transformed by the moral weight of choice. Lyra lay on her bunk that night, staring at the ceiling. Humans fight, they suffer, and they hope. And we must carry that lesson. We must remember courage without conscience is empty. Kether sat in quiet reflection. Leadership is about balance. Strength with empathy. Strategy with morality. That is what humans have taught us, even from afar.
Alice.
Oryn finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. And perhaps, in the end, we will honor them best by living our choices fully, by serving or leaving with courage, responsibility, and heart. The day ended with quiet determination. For some cadets, resignation would be the first step toward a new path. For others, renewed ethical service would guide their actions. Either way, the lessons of Earth had shaped them irrevocably. They had been tested not only in strategy, but in conscience. And in this test, half the cadets had already learned the hardest lesson. True courage is not only about facing danger, but also about facing oneself. The SpaceOdyssey drifted silently through the void, its hull reflecting distant starlight. Inside, the atmosphere was calm but filled with quiet anticipation. The previous days had been intense, leaving cadets emotionally and mentally transformed. Some had wrestled with doubt, others with inspiration. And now the time for decision had come. The reflection hall, where cadets had once written their observations, was filled with soft light. Holographic consoles displayed a summary of the simulation results and human war footage. Commander Zarn stood at the front, observing the cadets as they filed in. His silver eyes scanned each face, calm yet intense. "Today," Zarn began, "you will submit your final decisions. Some of you will continue in service. Others will leave. Whatever choice you make, it must reflect the lessons you have learned: courage, morality, and the understanding of life's cost. Serve or leave with conscience, not fear." Lyra HFY and Oryn approached the consoles together. Each felt the weight of the past days pressing on them. They had seen the suffering and bravery of humans. They had reflected, debated, and faced a simulation designed to test their ethics. Now, they had to decide their own paths. Lyra reached the console first. Her fingers hovered over the keys for a moment. She thought of the human soldiers who had protected children, the families who had survived against all odds, and the hope that had endured even amidst destruction. She typed slowly, carefully. "I choose to continue my service. Not blindly, not for glory, but to lead with conscience. I will honor life, protect the innocent, and inspire others to serve with courage and morality. Humanity has taught me that true strength lies not only in skill, but in choice." HFY moved next. He remembered the cadets who had resigned, the lessons of the simulation, and the heavy responsibility of leadership. His fingers moved steadily over the console. "I will stay in the service. I cannot ignore the lessons of Earth. I will apply them, balancing strategy with empathy. I will guide others, protect life whenever possible, and ensure that courage is always guided by conscience. This is my path forward." Oryn hesitated. The past days had shaken him deeply. He remembered the faces of civilians, the bravery of humans, and the cost of war. He finally typed, his tentacles trembling slightly, "I choose to resign. I cannot serve in a way that might conflict with what I have learned. I will dedicate my life to helping others in ways that preserve life and honor courage outside of military service. This is my choice, and it requires courage of a different kind." Around them, other cadets were submitting their decisions. Half of the room would leave the military, while the remaining half would stay, determined to lead differently, guided by ethics, and inspired by humanity's spirit. The energy in the hall was quiet, but powerful, a mix of resolve, reflection, and hope. Commander Zarn stepped forward, his voice calm but resonant. "You have made your choices. Both paths require courage. Some of you will stay, seeking to improve the system from within. Others will leave, applying your understanding in ways that honor life. Both are worthy. Both are necessary." A wave of relief passed through Lyra and HFY. Their choices were clear. They would stay, determined to serve ethically and lead with conscience. Oryn, though leaving, felt a quiet strength in his decision. It was not the easier path, but it was honest and true. Over the next few hours, the cadets processed their decisions. Those leaving began packing their belongings, while those staying gathered in small groups to discuss how to apply their new understanding to future missions. Conversations were calm, reflective, and often filled with admiration for human resilience. Lyra HFY and Oryn gathered on the observation deck one last time before Oryn's departure. Earth glowed below, a peaceful blue and green marble in the vast darkness. Lyra whispered, "They survived so much, and still they hope. That hope. It will guide us, whether we stay or leave." HFY nodded. "I have learned that leadership is not only about strategy, it is about protecting life, inspiring courage, and making difficult choices. That is what humans taught us, and that is what I will carry forward." Oryn looked down at Earth with quiet determination. "And I will honor that lesson by serving in my own way. Protecting life, helping others, teaching, and showing courage outside the battlefield. We are all shaped by what we learn, and this lesson is ours to keep. Commander Zarn joined them, his gaze sweeping over the planet. You have learned more than history or strategy. You have learned about life, choice, and courage. That is the greatest lesson any cadet can receive. You carry it now in your hearts, into whatever future you choose. The departing cadets were escorted to the docking bay, where smaller ships would carry them to humanitarian missions, research stations, or diplomatic units across the galaxy. Each carried a quiet determination, aware that courage and moral responsibility were not limited to military service. Some of them looked back at the remaining cadets, silently promising to continue their own fight for life in different ways. Meanwhile, the remaining cadets began discussing how to apply their lessons in service. They spoke of balancing strategy with empathy, protecting civilians, and inspiring others to make moral choices. Lyra and Kether were central in these discussions, recognized for their thoughtful leadership during the simulation. They realized that leadership was not only about orders or victory, it was about responsibility, ethics, and conscience. Days turned into weeks, and the SciFi-Prime continued its missions. The lessons of Earth guided the cadets in real situations. They approached conflicts with care, always considering the consequences of their actions. Civilians were protected, resources preserved, and the human-inspired philosophy of courage and morality began to shape the ship's culture. Lyra reflected often on the human spirit she had observed. They are fragile, yet unbreakable, she said to Kether, during one quiet evening on the observation deck. They endure, they protect, they hope, and we can learn from that, Kether agreed. We lead differently now because of them. Courage guided by conscience is stronger than courage guided by orders alone. That is the greatest lesson of all. Orrin, on his separate mission, also reflected on the lessons he had carried with him. He taught others, helped rebuild communities, and inspired hope in ways that did not require weapons or command. His courage was quiet but no less meaningful than that of the cadets who remained in service. Months later, cadets reunited on the SciFi-Prime for a review session. Stories were shared of ethical leadership, of difficult choices, and of lives saved because someone remembered the lessons of Earth. Commander Zarn smiled, seeing the transformation. The cadets had grown not only in skill, but in conscience. You have done well, Zarn said. Some of you led with courage, others with compassion, and some in both ways. That is the spirit I hoped you would take from the lessons of humanity. Always remember, courage is valuable, but morality gives it meaning. Power alone is not enough. You now carry that knowledge across the galaxy. The cadets looked out at the stars, thinking of Earth and the humans who had survived against all odds. They had witnessed suffering, hope, and ingenuity. They had reflected, debated, and faced choices that tested their hearts and minds. And now, they understood that leadership, courage, and conscience were intertwined. Lyra turned to Kether. We have learned something remarkable. Humans survive because they hope, because they care, and because they choose. That is the lesson we carry, no matter where we go. Kether smiled faintly. Yes, and now we must live by it. Lead by it. Teach it to others. That is how we honor their spirit. Orrin, watching from a nearby observation deck on his mission, whispered softly, Courage is not limited to war. Hope is not limited to survival. Life itself is the greatest battlefield, and the greatest victories come from protecting it. The SciFi-Prime sailed on, carrying cadets forever changed. Half had left to serve the galaxy in different ways, guided by empathy and moral responsibility. Half remained determined to lead ethically and inspire others. Together, they embodied the lessons of Earth, resilience, courage, ingenuity, and the unbreakable spirit of life. And from orbit, Earth glowed quietly, a symbol of hope, struggle, and humanity's enduring strength. Its lessons would ripple across the stars, shaping leaders, warriors, and heroes in ways the galaxy had never seen before. The story closed not with an end, but with a beginning. The cadets had learned that true strength was not only in fighting battles, but in facing oneself, choosing wisely, and honoring life wherever they went. Humanity had taught them that, and they would never forget.